चीफ मिनिस्टर है, गवर्नमेंट है, पर बॉस फिर भी सेंटर है।
हाँ बिल्कुल।
दिल्ली का केस तो हम रोज ही सुनते हैं, बट डिड यू नो कि आजादी के टाइम स्टेट्स की 3 अलग-अलग कैटेगरीज थी, पार्ट ए, बी और सी।
एग्जैक्टली, इट वाज अ वेरी डिफरेंट मैप ऑफ इंडिया बैक देन।
तो ये यूनियन टेरिटरीज का कॉन्सेप्ट आया कहां से? इट्स अ फैंटास्टिक स्टोरी ऑफ हाउ मॉडर्न इंडिया वाज पुट टुगेदर। सोचो जरा।
इट रियली इज।
इस अमेजिंग जर्नी को आगे बढ़ाने से पहले एक छोटा सा काम, मेक श्योर यू हिट दैट सब्सक्राइब बटन, एक बिग थम्स अप दो और नोटिफिकेशन बेल को ऑन कर लो ताकि हमारी डीप एनालिसिस की एक भी ड्रॉप मिस ना हो।
प्लीज डू, इट हेल्प्स अस अ लॉट।
रेडी? चलो शुरू करते हैं।
बिल्कुल, आज की इस गहरी चर्चा में हम सेवरल की एरियाज को एक्सप्लोर करेंगे। ये है हमारा लर्निंग मैप।
ओके, लेट आउट फॉर अस।
सबसे पहले जेनेसिस ऑफ यूनियन टेरिटरीज, इनकी शुरुआत कैसे हुई।
हम्म,
फिर यूनियन टेरिटरीज के एवोल्यूशन समझेंगे कि वो बदले कैसे ओवर टाइम।
द एवोल्यूशन पार्ट साउंड्स इंटरेस्टिंग।
उसके बाद एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर का रोल क्या होता है।
फिर आएगा सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट, प्रोविजन फॉर लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली एंड काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स। द दिल्ली केस।
यस, स्पेशली दिल्ली का स्पेशल केस। नेक्स्ट हम लेजिस्लेटिव एंड प्रेसिडेंशियल पावर्स को डिकोड करेंगे।
पावर डायनामिक्स ऑलवेज क्रूशियल।
फिर देखेंगे इनके लिए हाई कोर्ट्स का सिस्टम कैसे काम करता है। और एंड में एक्वायर्ड टेरिटरीज के एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को भी टच करेंगे।
वाओ, दैट्स अ कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव लिस्ट।
तो चलिए इस पूरी कहानी को अनपैक करते हैं।
Okay, let's start with the origin story.
करेक्ट।
The heading for our first topic is the origin story.
पार्ट सी स्टेट्स।
Part C states. Okay, so in a nutshell, what's the short definition?
बेसिकली द ओरिजिनल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ 1949 उसने स्टेट्स को 3 पार्ट्स में डिवाइड किया था, पार्ट ए, बी एंड सी।
Right. The Part C states, जो टोटल 10 थे,
हाँ।
वही आगे चलकर यूनियन टेरिटरीज का बेस बने। ये ऐसी टेरिटरीज थी जिन्हें सीधे सेंट्रल से एडमिनिस्टर किया जाता था।
ओके, डायरेक्ट सेंट्रल कंट्रोल।
Let's make this relatable with an example. सोचो, जैसे स्कूल में डिफरेंट हाउसेज होते हैं, रेड, ब्लू, ग्रीन,
हाँ।
सब स्कूल का पार्ट है, पर उनके रूल्स थोड़े अलग हो सकते हैं। वैसे ही पार्ट ए, बी एंड सी स्टेट से सब इंडिया का पार्ट,
हाँ।
पर एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन का स्टाइल अलग था।
दैट्स अ गुड एनालॉजी।
पार्ट सी स्टेट समझो वो हाउस थे जिसे सीधा प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफिस यानी द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट मैनेज करता था।
दैट्स अ परफेक्ट एनालॉजी। नाउ फॉर द डिटेल्ड कंटेंट डिस्कशन, लेट्स स्टार्ट विद द इंट्रोडक्शन। हम सब जानते हैं कि इंडिया में स्टेट्स हैं और यूनियन टेरिटरीज हैं, बट दिस सिस्टम वाजंट ऑलवेज लाइक दिस।
राइट, आपने बताया कि शुरुआत में द पिक्चर वाज क्वाइट डिफरेंट, मोर कॉम्प्लेक्स।
एग्जैक्टली। सो व्हाट वाज द बैकग्राउंड बिहाइंड दिस कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी?
क्यों थे इतने डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ स्टेट्स?
तो 1949 का ओरिजिनल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, उसके फर्स्ट शेड्यूल में ये कैटेगरीज इसलिए थी बिकॉज इंडियाज इंटीग्रेशन प्रोसेस वाज अ मैसिव अंडरटेकिंग।
मेक सेंस।
कुछ ब्रिटिश प्रोविंसेस थे, कुछ प्रिंसली स्टेट्स थे, तो उन सबको अकोमोडेट करना था। पार्ट सी स्टेट्स एक स्पेशल कैटेगरी थी, टोटल 10।
कैन वी लिस्ट देम फॉर मेमोरी?
ऑफ कोर्स, अजमेर, भोपाल, बिलासपुर, कुर्ग, दिल्ली, हिमाचल प्रदेश, कच्छ, मणिपुर, त्रिपुरा एंड विंध्या प्रदेश।
ओके, दैट्स अ गुड लिस्ट।
याद रखना, इनमें से कई स्मॉलर प्रिंसली स्टेट्स को इंटीग्रेट करके बनाए गए थे
दे वर ऑफन आइदर टू स्मॉल to become viable states on their own.
और were strategically too important to be merged with a larger state.
Precisely.
So what was the core logic of their administration? What made them different from part A and B states?
The core logic was direct central administration. In part C states को president administer करते थे through a chief commissioner or a lieutenant governor.
So these officials were basically the president's agents.
Exactly. ये president के agents होते थे. Parliament had full power to make laws for these states on any subject.
But, and this is interesting, the constitution ने parliament को एक और power दी.
Okay, what was that?
The power to create a legislature or a council of advisors or even a council of ministers for these states.
Oh, so a form of local government.
Yes, and parliament used this power. उन्होंने Government of Part C States Act 1951 enact किया.
Okay, and what did this act do?
इस एक्ट ने हर पार्ट सी स्टेट में एक लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली और एक काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स बनाया जो चीफ कमिश्नर को एडवाइस करते थे। ऑफ कोर्स सब कुछ प्रेसिडेंट के ओवरऑल कंट्रोल के अंडर ही था।
So what was the real world impact of this for the people living there? Did they feel like they had a voice?
आई थिंक सो। इसका मतलब आम लोगों के लिए ये था कि उन्हें लोकल रिप्रेजेंटेशन का एक फॉर्म मिल गया था, इवन दो द फाइनल कंट्रोल रिमेन्ड विद द सेंटर।
So it was like a step towards democracy.
A step towards democratic governance in these smaller, strategically important areas. It was a training ground for democracy, you could say.
And your conclusion on this topic? How do we sum up Part C states?
तो पार्ट सी स्टेट्स एक तरह से मॉडर्न यूनियन टेरिटरीज के प्रीडिसेसर्स थे, सेंट्रली एडमिनिस्टर्ड बट विद अ प्रोविजन फॉर लोकल लेजिस्लेटिव बॉडीज। ये एक एक्सपेरिमेंटल फेज था, a way to balance central control with local aspirations.
Got it. Experimental phase. Okay, time for some cross-questioning to solidify this. My first question, since Delhi was a Part C state, was it a special case from the very beginning?
Yes, in a way. The source material confirms that Delhi, along with Ajmer and Kurg, were chief commissioners' provinces even before the constitution.
Oh, even before?
Yes, under the Government of India Acts of 1919 and 1935. So इनकी centrally administered होने की हिस्ट्री काफी पुरानी है।
Interesting. Here's my second question. This government of Part C States Act 1951, which created local legislatures, did it reduce Parliament's power over these states?
That's a very sharp question. And the answer is no, बिल्कुल नहीं. The act was very clear that the creation of a local legislature was without derogation to the plenary powers of Parliament.
Without derogation to the plenary powers? मतलब
पार्लियामेंट की सुप्रीम लॉ मेकिंग पावर वैसे ही बनी रही। लोकल असेंबली के आने से उस पर कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ा। कूल ना? वेरी कूल। थर्ड क्वेश्चन फॉर मेमोरी, हाउ मेनी पार्ट सी स्टेट्स वर देयर इन टोटल अगेन? देयर वर 10 इन नंबर। नाम भी सिंपल है, अजमेर, भोपाल, बिलासपुर, कूर्ग, दिल्ली, हिमाचल प्रदेश, कच्छ, मणिपुर, त्रिपुरा एंड विंध्या प्रदेश। 2-3 बार बोलने से आराम से याद हो जाएगा।
Okay, will do. Fourth question, you mentioned the administrator was the president's agent. What is the constitutional significance of this word agent?
बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट। एजेंट का मतलब है कि द चीफ कमिश्नर और लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर डिड नॉट हैव एन इंडिपेंडेंट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल पोजीशन लाइक अ स्टेट गवर्नर हैज।
So no independent discretion.
None. They acted directly on the instructions of the president. उनकी अपनी कोई discretionary power नहीं थी. Crystal clear. Final question for this segment. Did all 10 of these Part C states eventually become uni territories?
नहीं, और यही तो अगला twist है in the story. Some were merged into other states. This leads us perfectly to our next topic.
Excellent. But first, the practice cue. Right. Now pause and practice saying this part aloud. The 10 Part C states were administered by the president through a chief commissioner. And the Government of Part C States Act 1951 provided them with a legislative assembly without reducing Parliament's supreme power. And the mini recap, the genesis of UTs lies in the Part C states, which were centrally administered territories with some local legislative powers, acting as a constitutional experiment.
Perfect. So what happened to these Part C states? Let's move on. The heading for this next section is The Great Reorganization, Birth of Union Territories.
Exactly. The short definition is this. In 1956, the States Reorganization Act and the 7th Constitutional Amendment Act, they abolished the category of Part C states.
Abolished completely?
Yes, and created a new category called Union Territories. कुछ पुराने Part C states को पास के states में merge कर दिया गया और बचे हुए UTs बन गए.
I think an analogy would work well here. Imagine you have a playlist on your phone called Old Songs.
Okay.
उस playlist को delete कर देते हो.
हाँ, I see where you're going with this.
बस यही हुआ, Part C states Old Songs playlist delete हो गया, कुछ बड़े states में merge हो गए 90s hits और बाकी ने मिलकर Union Territories classic hits का नया playlist बनाया. Perfect analogy. Let's start the content discussion. Introduction. 1956 was a landmark year for India's internal map. सब कुछ बदल गया. It redrew the lines and simplified the structure of the country significantly. And what was the background to this massive change? Why did it happen in 1956?
The demand for linguistic states based on language, was growing stronger across the country. इसके जवाब में, the States Reorganization Act 1956 was passed.
And during this process,
reorganization process, the three-tiered system of Part A, B, and C states was considered inefficient and complex. So the Constitution, 7th Amendment Act 1956, replaced it with a simpler two-tiered system.
states and
Union territories.
precisely.
So what was the core logic of this new system? What actually happened to the 10 Part C states?
हुआ क्या? The Part C states of Ajmer, Bhopal, Coorg, Kuch, and Vindhya Pradesh. इन पांचों को they were merged into adjoining states.
So they vanished from the map as separate entities.
Yes, या कह लो बड़े states का हिस्सा बन गए. जो बच गए, दिल्ली, हिमाचल प्रदेश, जिसमें बिलासपुर merge हो गया, मणिपुर and त्रिपुरा, ये बने नए union territories.
Okay, so 4 from the old list became UTs.
Correct. और इनके साथ 2 और territories add की गई. Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which was the old Part D state, right?
Right. Excellent memory. Yes. And the second edition was the Laccadive, Minicoy and Amindivi Islands.
That's a mouthful.
It was. ये पहले मद्रास स्टेट का हिस्सा थे और 1973 में इनका नाम लक्षद्वीप हुआ.
Ah, Lakshadweep. So, what was the real world impact of creating this new UT category?
इससे इंडिया का एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव मैप अलॉट सिंपलर हो गया. अब आमतौर पे 2 ही कैटेगरीज आई, स्टेट्स और यूनियन टेरिटरीज. लेकिन कहानियां खत्म नहीं हुई.
There's more.
Yes, over time many of these union territories जैसे हिमाचल प्रदेश, मणिपुर, त्रिपुरा, मिजोरम, अरुणाचल प्रदेश and गोवा को full statehood मिल गया.
They graduated to become states.
Exactly, they graduated. So the list of UTs has been dynamic, changing over time. At present, we have 8 union territories.
So the conclusion here is
The conclusion is that the category of union territories was born out of a massive reorganization exercise in 1956, and this list has been dynamic. It's a flexible category, with territories being added and some graduating to become full-fledged states.
very interesting. Time for cross-questioning. First, let's test our memory. So, in 1956, right after the reorganization, how many UTs were there in total? Let's count. We have Delhi, Himachal Pradesh, Manipur, and Tripura. That's 4. Plus the 2 new additions, Andaman and Nicobar Islands and the Laccadive group. So total 6.
Total 6 UTs were there initially, right after the 1956 reorganization.
Correct. Okay, you mentioned Andaman and Nicobar was a Part D state. What exactly was that? Was it the only one?
Excellent observation. Yes, Part D was a unique category in the original constitution containing only the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. It was administered by the president through a chief commissioner. The 1956 amendment abolished Part D along with Part C and simply converted ANN into a UT.
Got it. My third question is a bit of a surprise for many, I think. States like Goa, Mizoram, and Arunachal Pradesh. Were they all really union territories before becoming states?
Yes, absolutely. This is a common misconception. Many of our present-day states, especially in the northeast and Goa as well, started their journey as union territories. ये उनके political evolution का एक important phase था. याद रखना.
Wow. Okay, fourth one, a good general knowledge question. What was the original name of Lakshadweep again?
The 10 was the Laccadive, Minicoy, and Amindivi Islands. The name was changed to Lakshadweep in 1973. It's a great trivia fact.
Definitely. Last question for this topic. Does this mean all union territories are governed in the exact same way today? Is it a homogeneous system?
Not at all. और यही इस टॉपिक को और भी fascinating बनाता है. As the source material says, there are some differences in the actual system of administration.
And our next sections will explore exactly that, I presume.
You presume correctly.
Okay, but first, the practice cue. Right, practice this aloud. The States Reorganization Act 1956 replaced Part C states with union territories, merging some old ones and creating a new list which included Delhi and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And the mini recap?
The 1956 reorganization created the modern category of union territories, a dynamic list where some UTs later became states. All right, so if UTs are directly under the center, who runs them on the ground? This brings us to topic 3. The heading is the President's Agent, the Administrator.
Correct. The short definition is that every union territory is administered by the President acting through an administrator.
So the buck stops with the President.
Always. This administrator is the President's agent और उन्हें अलग-अलग UTs में अलग-अलग designations दी जाती हैं, जैसे Lieutenant Governor, Chief Commissioner या सिर्फ Administrator.
Okay, different names for the same basic role. Here's a real-life example. Think of a large company's CEO who represents the President.
Okay, the CEO is the President.
उसकी अलग-अलग cities में branch offices हैं, which are the union territories. हर branch office को एक branch manager चलाता है, who is the administrator.
Make sense?
The branch manager reports directly to the CEO and follows their instructions. वही role है administrator का. Perfect analogy. For our content discussion, the introduction is simple. The on-ground execution of the union's control in a UT is done by this key figure, the administrator. What's the constitutional background for this position? Where is it mentioned?
The foundation is Article 239, Clause 1 of the Constitution. It's very clear. It says every union territory shall be administered by the President acting through an administrator.
That line is very important.
It is. It establishes the direct chain of command from the President.
And what's the core logic? How is the administrator appointed and how are these different designations decided?
So the President appoints the administrator and the designation is also decided by the President as he may specify. This is why we see heterogeneous designations.
Can you give examples?
Sure. For example, we have a Lieutenant Governor in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Delhi, Puducherry, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh.
Okay, the larger UTs mostly.
Right. And we have an administrator in Chandigarh, Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu and Lakshadweep.
I see.
There's another interesting provision in Article 239, Clause 2. इसके मुताबिक, the President can appoint the governor of an adjoining state to be the administrator of a UT.
Oh, so one person, two roles.
Yes. And जब ऐसा होता है, तो the governor, when acting as an administrator, functions independently of his council of ministers. मतलब वो अपने state के ministers से UT के matters के लिए सलाह नहीं लेंगे.
That's a very important distinction. So what's the real-world impact of this structure?
The clear impact is that a UT's head is fundamentally different from a state governor. A state governor is the constitutional head of the state,
But an administrator is.
purely an agent of the president. This defines the power dynamics and ensures the union's firm control.
So the conclusion
So
is...
the administrator is the pivot of a UT's administration, directly appointed by and responsible to the president, with varied designations across different territories. This setup is the key to ensuring the union's control.
Great. Let's do some cross-questioning. First, is there a power difference between a lieutenant governor and an administrator? Or is it just a name?
Primarily, it's a difference in designation specified by the president. The fundamental role as the president's agent remains the same under Article 239(1).
But
However, specific acts related to certain UTs, like the one for Delhi, might give more defined statutory roles and responsibilities to the LG. So there can be differences based on specific laws.
Okay. Second question. The governor of Punjab is also the administrator of Chandigarh. You said he acts independently. Can you re-clarify? Can he use his Punjab ministers for advice on Chandigarh's issues?
Absolutely not. Article 239(2) is crystal clear on this. When acting as an administrator, they function independently of their state's council of ministers. इस dual role में complete separation of function है. समझे?
Got it. Complete separation. Third, which article should students remember for the administrator's appointment? One more time.
That would be Article 239 Clause 1. ये article UT administration का starting point है. जरूर याद रखना.
Okay. Fourth, why is there a lieutenant governor in Puducherry but an administrator in Lakshadweep? Is there any specific reason in the constitution?
The source simply states that the president specifies the designation. The constitution doesn't provide a fixed reason. It's a matter of executive discretion, probably based on historical context, the size of the territory, or administrative convenience.
I see. Final question. A source states, there does not exist a homogeneous class of union territories. What does this line really mean in practice?
It means you cannot paint all UTs with the same brush. एक तरफ you have Chandigarh with a relatively simple administrative setup. दूसरी तरफ you have Delhi with its own legislature, chief minister, and a very complex power-sharing arrangement.
So they are all UTs, but their governance models are vastly different.
Exactly.
Got it. Let's do the practice cue. Practice saying this. Under Article 239, the President administers a UT through an administrator, who is the President's agent and can be designated as a Lieutenant Governor or an administrator.
And the mini recap.
The administrator is the President's agent in a UT
ensuring union control, and the designation varies across territories.
Okay, so far it seems UTs are just centrally run. But what about democracy? This brings us to the most debated topic, I think. Topic 4, the Delhi dilemma and Puducherry model. UTs with legislatures.
Yes. The short definition is that some union territories, through constitutional amendments, have been given the power to have their own legislative assembly, Vidhan Sabha, and Council of Ministers, Mantri Parishad.
So they get their own elected government.
Correct. Puducherry, Delhi, and Jammu and Kashmir are the current examples. But Delhi's status is sui generis, which means it's completely unique.
Sui generis. I love that term. Let's use an analogy. Imagine a school hostel. ज्यादातर डॉर्म्स मोस्ट यूटीज को सीधा वार्डन एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर मैनेज करता है
Right. Direct control.
लेकिन कुछ स्पेशल डॉर्म्स लाइक दिल्ली एंड पुडुचेरी को अपने स्टूडेंट प्रीफेक्ट्स काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स और एक हेड प्रीफेक्ट चीफ मिनिस्टर चुनने का अधिकार है जो डेली मैटर्स देखते हैं
Okay.
लेकिन हॉस्टल के मेन रूल्स जैसे डिसिप्लिन एंड ऑल अभी भी वार्डन ही डिसाइड करता है दिस इज द मॉडल ऑफ यूटीज विद अ लेजिस्लेचर
Excellent analogy. Now for the content discussion. Introduction. The biggest question is, can union territories have democratic governments? The Constitution says, yes, they can. Let's see how. What's the historical background for this provision? How did it start? In 1962, a new article, Article 239A, was added to the Constitution. It empowered Parliament to create a legislature or a council of ministers, or both, for certain UTs.
ओके सो पार्लियामेंट गॉट द पावर
Yes. And using this power, Parliament passed the Government of Union Territories Act 1963. इसके under several UTs got legislatures. But over time, most of them became full states.
एंड फ्रॉम दैट ओरिजिनल लिस्ट
As of now, from that original list, only Puducherry remains under this general framework. That brings us to the core logic and the most complex case study, Delhi. What makes it so different? Why is sui generis? Delhi's case is completely separate. It's not under Article 239A. In 1991, the 69th Amendment Act added two new articles, 239AA and 239AB.
स्पेसिफिकली फॉर दिल्ली
Specifically for Delhi, this amendment gave Delhi the special status of the National Capital Territory of Delhi, NCT of Delhi. This is the sui generis status, meaning of its own kind.
So what are the powers of the Delhi government under this?
Under this, Delhi's Legislative Assembly can make laws on most subjects in the state list and concurrent list. However, and this is the most important part, there are three crucial exceptions.
The three reserved subjects.
Yes, Entry 1, Public Order, Entry 2, Police, and Entry 18, Land. ये तीन subjects are directly under the union government's control.
This is where the tussle happens.
The real conflict has been over services, which is Entry 41 of state list. It means control over bureaucrats, who post them, who transfers them.
Right, the IAS IPS officers.
Exactly. Supreme Court judgments in 2018 and 2023 said that the Lieutenant Governor is generally bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. The 2023 judgment specifically gave control of services to the Delhi government.
But that didn't last long.
No. Right after the 2023 judgment, the Union government brought in the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Amendment Ordinance 2023, which later became an act.
And this act did what?
This act effectively took services out of the control of the Delhi government and created a new authority, the National Capital Civil Service Authority, where the union has a final say.
So the situation is back to square one, in a way.
Basically, yes. And the constitutional validity of this new act is now before a larger constitutional bench of the Supreme Court.
What's the real world impact of this continuous struggle?
This constant tussle directly affects Delhi's administration. From the posting and transfer of officers to the implementation of policies, everything is impacted by this power struggle. It's a living example of cooperative federalism being tested daily.
And your conclusion on this complex issue?
While the constitution provides for legislatures in UTs, the Delhi model shows a complex, contested space. The lines between the powers of an elected government and the union's representative, the LG, are constantly being drawn and redrawn by Parliament and the judiciary.
It's a constantly evolving situation. Let's dive into some cross-questioning. First, in simple terms, can the Chief Minister of Delhi give an order to the Delhi Police Commissioner?
Nahi. Public order, police, and land are the three reserved subjects. The Delhi Assembly cannot make laws on them, and the Delhi government does not have executive control over them. They fall directly under the Union Home Ministry.
Okay. Second, can you explain the term sui generis again? Why is it used for Delhi specifically?
It's a Latin term meaning unique in its characteristics. दिल्ली को ये स्टेटस इसलिए दिया गया है क्योंकि वो ना तो एक फुल स्टेट है और ना ही a regular UT like Puducherry. Being the national capital, it was felt that the union government must have special control over it.
Third, what is the main constitutional difference between the Puducherry model and the Delhi model? You mentioned different articles.
Yes, Delhi's model comes from the very specific Article 239AA, which is tailor-made for Delhi and explicitly excludes the three subjects. Puducherry's model is based on the more general Article 239A and the Government of Union Territories Act 1963, which provides a broader, more flexible framework.
Fourth, was the 2023 ordinance brought to defy the Supreme Court's judgment? How does that work?
It was brought to nullify the effect of the judgment. Parliament has the power to legislate and change the legal basis of a court judgment. Now the constitutionality of this new act itself is being tested by the Supreme Court. So the final word is not yet out.
Final question, when can the LG of Delhi use his own discretion without listening to the elected government?
According to the Supreme Court's interpretation, the LG's discretionary power is limited. It applies mainly to matters outside the Delhi Assembly's power, like the three reserved subjects, or where a law specifically grants him discretionary power. In all other matters, he is bound by the aid and advice of the ministers.
Understood. Very complex but clear now. Time for the practice cue. Okay, practice saying this aloud. Article 239A gives Delhi a sui generis status with the legislature, but excludes powers over police, public order, and land, leading to a complex power dynamic. And the mini recap.
Some UTs have legislatures, but Delhi's unique constitutional setup leads to a complex and often contested power-sharing arrangement with the union.
This leads to a bigger question about power. Who is the ultimate lawmaker for UTs? The topic is Parliament's supremacy versus President's regulation.
Yes. The short definition is that the ultimate lawmaking power for any union territory rests with the parliament, even on subjects in the state list.
Even on the state list. That's a huge power.
It is. However, for a few specific UTs, the president has a special power to make regulations which can be so powerful that they can even override an act of parliament.
Oh, override parliament. Let's use an analogy. सोचो घर के रूल्स या लॉज नॉर्मली मॉम डैड बनाते हैं
Okay.
लेकिन घर में एक छोटा बच्चा या एक स्पेसिफिक यूटी लाइक लक्षद्वीप है उसके डेली रूटीन के लिए दादाजी भी स्पेशल रूल्स या रेगुलेशंस बना सकते हैं
All right.
और अगर दादाजी का रूल मॉम डैड के रूल से क्लैश करे तो बच्चे के केस में दादाजी की बात मानी जाएगी That's the power of presidential regulations. That's a brilliant way to put it. Now for the content discussion. Introduction. Let's talk about the source of power. कौन बनाता है UTs के लिए कानून? For states, the power is divided. But what about UTs? So what's the background and constitutional basis for this?
The basis is in two key articles. The system has two major players.
Let's break down the core logic. Who is the first player?
The first and most important player is Parliament. Article 246, Clause 4 says that Parliament has the power to make laws on any matter for any union territory, even those subjects that are enumerated in the state list.
So for UTs, Parliament acts as both the central and state legislature.
You can think of it that way. The division of power, like the state list, doesn't act as a boundary for Parliament.
And who is the second player with this Dadaji power?
The second player is the President. Article 240 gives the President a special power for a few specific UTs. The source mentions Puducherry, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, and Daman and Diu, Lakshadweep, and Andaman and Nicobar.
For what purpose?
For the peace, progress, and good government of these territories, the President can make regulations. And here is the superpower part. Article 240, Clause 2 says that such a regulation made by the President can repeal or amend any act of Parliament that applies to that UT. That is a huge power. Is there a catch?
Yes, there is a catch, a very important one. The President's regulation-making power remains suspended for any UT that has a functioning legislature, like Puducherry.
So, as long as the elected government is working, the President cannot use this power. Correct. But जैसे ही वो legislature dissolve या suspend होती है, for example, during President's rule, the President's power revives.
What's the real-world impact of this dual control system? Why does it exist?
This system ensures that for strategic, remote, or sensitive territories, the center can take quick and decisive action through presidential regulations without waiting for the entire parliamentary process. It provides flexibility.
And the conclusion?
So, the conclusion is that while Parliament has supreme overarching legislative power for all UTs, the President holds a special overriding regulatory power for a select few, creating a flexible and powerful governance tool for the Union.
Time for cross-questioning. Let me get this straight. If Parliament made a law for Lakshadweep, can the President change it with a simple regulation?
Yes, exactly. Under Article 242, a regulation made by the President has the same force and effect as an act of Parliament and can even repeal or amend a law made by Parliament in its application to that UT.
Is this presidential power applicable to all UTs like Delhi or Chandigarh?
Nahi. Article 240 specifies the UTs. The source mentions the island territories, Dadar and Nagar Haveli, and Daman and Diu, and Puducherry. It does not apply to Delhi, Chandigarh, or J&K.
Okay, so for Puducherry, which has a legislative assembly, what happens to the President's power there?
Bilkul sahi point. As long as Puducherry's assembly is functioning, the President's power to make regulations for it remains suspended. But if President's rule is imposed and the assembly is dissolved, this power will revive.
Which article gives Parliament the power to legislate on state list subjects for UTs? Let's revise that.
That is Article 246, Clause 4. It's a cornerstone of the legislative framework for UTs. Zarur yaad rakhna.
Final question. The phrase peace, progress and good government sounds very broad. What does it legally mean?
It's a constitutional phrase that grants very wide legislative powers. Iske andar almost any kind of law or regulation can be made as long as the objective is the welfare of that territory. It gives a very wide scope of action.
Got it. Let's practice. Practicing this. Article 246(4) gives Parliament supreme legislative power over UTs, while Article 240 gives the President overriding regulatory power for specific UTs like Andaman and Lakshadweep.
And the mini recap.
For UTs, Parliament is the main lawmaker, but for some, the President has special overriding regulation-making powers.
Okay, we have laws and administration. But where do people in UTs go for justice? Topic 6, justice for the territories, the High Court system.
Right. The short definition is that a union territory can have its own High Court, or it can be placed under the jurisdiction of a neighboring state's High Court.
So it's flexible.
Very. Parliament decides this by making a law.
Here's a simple analogy. सोचो कुछ बड़ी societies, states के पास अपना क्लब हाउस हाई कोर्ट है.
Okay.
कुछ छोटी societies, UTs अपना क्लब हाउस अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकती, तो वो पास वाली बड़ी सोसाइटी के क्लब हाउस को यूज करने का अरेंजमेंट कर लेती हैं.
Common High Court.
That makes sense.
लेकिन एक अमीर बड़ी छोटी सोसाइटी, दिल्ली, अपना खुद का फैंसी क्लब हाउस बना लेती है, separate High Court.
That's a very clear way to see it.
Let's talk about the content discussion. Introduction. Laws are made and the government is set up. But if there's a legal dispute, where do people go? Let's talk about the judicial structure for UTs. What is the constitutional background for this? Which article powers Parliament to, by law, constitute a high court for a union territory or declare any court in any such territory to be a high court?
So again, the power is with Parliament.
Yes.
So what is the core logic of the system in place today? What has Parliament decided?
Because Parliament has this power, we see a mixed system in reality. First, we have UTs with a separate high court.
Delhi is the classic example.
Yes, Delhi has had its own high court since 1966. Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh also have their own common high court.
And the second model?
The second model is common high courts. Most UTs follow this model. For example, Chandigarh is under the Punjab and Haryana High Court.
And the others?
Lakshadweep is under the Kerala High Court. Andaman and Nicobar Islands are under the Calcutta High Court. Puducherry is under the Madras High Court. And Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu are under the Bombay High Court.
Wow, that's a lot of sharing. What is the real-world impact of this arrangement?
This flexible arrangement ensures access to justice for people in all territories. Common high courts are cost-effective and help in pooling judicial expertise, especially for smaller territories that may not need a full-fledged high court of their own.
And the conclusion on this?
So the conclusion is that the judicial administration for UTs is practical and flexible, relying heavily on nearby state high courts, with the notable exception of Delhi, which enjoys its own high court, reflecting its special status.
All right, time for cross-questioning. First, can a union territory's government request Parliament to give it its own high court?
They can certainly make a request or pass a resolution in their assembly. But the final decision rests solely with the Parliament. Article 241 is clear. Parliament may by law. So it is a legislative decision, not an administrative one.
Okay. Second, just to be clear, people from Puducherry have to travel to Chennai for high court matters.
Yes, that's correct. Since Puducherry comes under the jurisdiction of the Madras High Court, the principal seat is in Chennai, though sometimes benches are set up for easier access.
Third, is it possible for any part of India, including a UT, to not be under any high court's jurisdiction?
No, that's not possible. Every inch of India's territory falls under the jurisdiction of some high court and ultimately the Supreme Court. Access to justice is a fundamental part of our constitutional scheme.
Fourth question, it's a bit hard to remember which UT is under which high court. Is there a trick?
Geography helps a lot. Dekho, Lakshadweep is an island group off the coast of Kerala, Kerala at sea. Andaman is in the Bay of Bengal, closer to Kolkata, Kolkata at sea. Daman and Diu, Dadra and Nagar Haveli are near Gujarat, Maharashtra, Bombay at sea. थोड़ा मैप देखने से associate करना आसान हो जाता है. Cool ना?
That's a great tip. Final question on this. What about the northern eastern states that were once UTs?
That's an interesting point from the source. The Guwahati High Court was once a common high court for 7 states. Even after many got their own high courts, it continues to serve as a common high court for some, like Arunachal Pradesh. This shows the common HC model is very successful.
Great. Let's do the practice cue. Practice saying this. Under Article 241, Parliament can establish a high court for a UT, but most UTs share a high court with a neighboring state, like Lakshadweep with the Kerala High Court. And the mini recap?
UTs get justice either through a dedicated high court like Delhi or more commonly through the high court of an adjacent state. Okay, last topic. This is a hypothetical but important one. Topic 7. New lands. Administering acquired territories.
Yes. The short definition is that if India acquires a new territory in the future, the constitution does not have a separate set of rules for its administration.
So what happens?
It is automatically treated as a union territory, and all the constitutional provisions for UTs apply to it by default.
That's very efficient. Let's use an analogy. सोचो आपके पास different types of storage boxes हैं. One for books, one for clothes.
Okay.
You also have a miscellaneous box with a rule that anything that doesn't fit in the other boxes goes here. अब आपको एक ऐसी चीज मिलती है जिसके लिए कोई specific box नहीं है, जैसे एक नया gadget.
Right.
आप उसे by default miscellaneous box में डाल देते हो. Acquired territories are like that new gadget, and the union territory category is the default miscellaneous box.
That's a fantastic way to explain it. Let's do the final content discussion. Introduction. What if India acquires a new territory tomorrow through treaty, purchase, or any other means? How will we govern it? What's the background? Did the constitution makers really think of this possibility?
Yes, they did. They were very far-sighted. They created a very flexible provision to handle this exact situation without needing a new constitutional amendment every time.
So what is the core logic? Where is this provision hidden? The solution is elegantly hidden in a definition. There is no separate chapter for acquired territories. The key lies in Article 366, Clause 30, which defines a union territory.
Okay, in the definition itself.
Yes. The definition says a UT means any UT specified in the first schedule and, crucially, any other territory comprised within the territory of India but not specified in that schedule.
Ah, that last phrase is the key.
That's the masterstroke. It means any newly acquired territory automatically falls under this definition and is, by default, a UT. The example from our source is Pondicherry.
Tell us about that.
When the French territories were transferred to India, they were first administered by the president through a chief commissioner and then formally made a union territory in 1962, all under this framework.
What's the real-world impact of this simple but clever provision?
This provision gives the Indian state immense flexibility. If a new territory is acquired, there's no need for a massive constitutional amendment just to set up its basic administration. It can immediately be brought under the union's direct control as a UT.
And the conclusion? So the framework for acquired territories is simple and efficient. They are, by definition, treated as union territories, bringing them seamlessly under the established and legislative control of the union. Okay, final cross-questioning session. When Sikkim became a part of India, was it first an acquired territory governed as a UT?
Sikkim's case is unique and more complex. It first became an associate state through one amendment and then a full-fledged state through another. The Pondicherry example from the source is a more direct fit for the acquired territory becoming a UT model.
Got it. Let's revise the article number. Which article's definition ensures acquired territories become UTs?
It's the definition in Article 366, Clause 30. It doesn't state it directly, but the wording is so smart that it includes them automatically. Smart drafting, right?
Very smart. Does an acquired territory have to remain a UT forever?
Not necessarily. Parliament has the power to later make it a full state or merge it with an existing state, just like we saw with other UTs like Goa or Arunachal Pradesh. The UT status is often the first transitional step.
And does Parliament's supreme lawmaking power under Article 246(4) apply to these new territories as well?
Yes, absolutely. Once it's part of India's territory, Article 246(4) applies and Parliament can make laws on any subject for it.
Final question. When was Pondicherry formally made a UT?
The source mentions the year 1962. Before that, after the de facto transfer from the French, it was being administered directly by the president as an acquired territory.
Great. Let's do the final practice cue.
According to the definition in Article 366(30), any new acquired territory is automatically administered as a union territory.
And the final mini recap.
Acquired territories are by default governed as union territories, ensuring immediate and seamless integration under union control.
Wow, what a journey. From the old Part C states to the complex modern-day case of Delhi. चलो एक quick recap करते हैं.
बिल्कुल.
आज की हमारी गहरी चर्चा का ब्रॉड माइक्रो थीम था अंडरस्टैंडिंग इंडियाज फेडरल स्ट्रक्चर द यूनिक केस ऑफ यूनियन टेरिटरीज. हमने देखा फर्स्ट द जेनेसिस एंड एवोल्यूशन. द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ यूटीज began with Part C states which were then transformed by the 1956 reorganization.
They are governed by the president through an administrator who acts as the president's agent, not as a state governor. Then the big one, legislatures. Some UTs, like Puducherry and Delhi, have legislatures. But Delhi's sui generis status under Art 239AA makes it unique and a site of constant power tussles.
Right. And on powers. Parliament, Article 246(4), has the ultimate law-making power. But the President, Article 240, also has overriding regulatory powers for a few specific UTs. Finally, judiciary and acquisition. UTs either have their own high court, like Delhi, or fall under a neighboring state's HC. And any acquired territory is by default administered as a UT.
Fantastic, Mary. अब to make sure ये सब अच्छे से याद हो गया है, here are 6 quick content probes for self-presentation. अपने आप को आईने के सामने चैलेंज करो.
Okay, challenge accepted. What's the first one? Explain the key difference between a Part C state and a union territory in one sentence.
Name the 3 subjects on which the Delhi Legislative Assembly cannot make laws.
What is the core difference between an administrator of a UT and a governor of a state?
Which article gives the president special regulation-making powers for certain UTs like Andaman?
Which high court has jurisdiction over Lakshadweep?
And the last one.
How is an acquired territory administered immediately after acquisition? Great questions, and here is your final challenge from us. Rehearse presenting the entire journey of Delhi's special status from the 69th Amendment to the 2023 legislative changes in under 2 minutes. Try explaining it to a friend. देखो कितना याद है.
Brilliant. हमारा काम है कॉन्सेप्ट्स को क्रिस्टल क्लियर करना. अगर आपको ये गहरी चर्चा पसंद आई तो हमें कमेंट्स में जरूर बताना. What should we explore next?
सब्सक्राइब करना मत भूलना, बेल आइकॉन दबाना और इस नॉलेज को अपने दोस्तों के साथ शेयर करना. Until next time, keep diving deep.